The year is 1991. We have just seen what turns out to be the final film. It's featuring all of the original cast of Star Trek 6, The Undiscovered Country, not Star Trek The Final Frontier. Very confusing. We've seen it. It's a lovely send-off, but we are going to fix it. Cue the intro.
Hello, audience, and welcome to the Mirror Movie Universe podcast. I'm one half of this shindig, and my name is Nate. And across the aisle and across the country from me is my co-host, Dan. Say hello, Dan.
Hey, everybody. The John to your Paul, the whatever to your whatever, opposite, but also very much the same.
The Roger Waters to whoever else was in Pink Floyd. Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to talk about Undiscovered Country. Before we say what we like, dislike, and what we would fix about it, we're going to have to talk about what happens in Undiscovered Country.
Yeah.
So, like Dan said, that this is the last film that features all of the original Star Trek cast. They'll come up here and there throughout the rest of the series and another movie or two. But this film opens with Praxis, a moon of the Klingon homeworld Kronos, exploding. It's a energy production world or something of the like, and it's essential for them to live. And so the Klingon Empire only has something like a couple of dozen more years to go. They immediately start peace talks with the Federation. There's an old captain who's not too happy about this, and it's Captain Kirk. He is ordered to escort a Klingon, actually, I think it's the Klingon Chancellor, to some peace talks. And there is a mysterious sort of event in which that Klingon Chancellor is murdered. There's a torpedo fired from the Enterprise. The Enterprise doesn't remember. No one on the Enterprise remembers firing the torpedo, and it hits the Klingon ship, takes out their anti gravity systems, so everyone's floating around. And two Federation officers in gravity boots beam onto the ship and kill the Klingon Chancellor. Kirk and Bones immediately beam over there. Bones is unable to save him, and Kirk is implicated because of his hatred for Klingons. There's a trial in which a conniving General Chang, an excellent Klingon played by Christopher Plummer, implicates both of them in the death of the Chancellor and sentences them to hard labor on a prison world. They go to this prison world and try their best to Shawshank Redemption their way out. Meanwhile, Spock is in command of the Enterprise, trying to figure out who did the murder. They're looking for the gravity boots that were used in kind of a Sherlock Holmesian murder mystery police procedural kind of thing going on, which was really fun. And the prison break goes pretty well for Kirk and McCoy. The peace talks proceed, and they find another plot to assassinate the Federation president, who's played by the dad from that '70s show, which I think is hilarious. And they have to thwart it before it occurs. There's a final battle with General Chang's cloaked bird of prey in space, where Captain Sulu swoops in and saves the day and helps everyone out a bit. And they save the president at the end of the film. A lot of stuff happens in Undiscovered Country. I know I've left some stuff out. Don't yell at me. I know that I left out the Vulcan gal who replaces Saavik and is secretly turns out to be evil. I know that I've left out the entire subplot with the shapeshifter lady in the prison. But hey, I'm not perfect. Neither is this film. But I still like stuff about it. Dan, what do you like about Undiscovered Country?
Yeah, I think it's a nice send-off for everyone, and I'm glad that Paramount greenlit another one after The Final Frontier. Like, it's a really good way to send everybody off. Mm-hmm. The Klingons have always kind of been stand-ins for the Russians. It's 1991. The Berlin Wall is down. Countries are declaring independence from the USSR. We also know at this point, Star Trek: The Next Generation has started, that there is a time in the future of the Star Trek world where the Klingons are not the number one enemy of the Federation. So it's really cool that we get to see that play out. It's a very momentous and historic moment in this world, and it's nice that it kind of mimics what's happening in our own world with the fall of Russia and the Cold War ending. I wish that things with Russia had stayed so good, but that's their fault. Um, I think that there's a really nice through line here that ties back to what was happening with Star Trek 234.
Mm-hmm.
There's a moment with Kirk and Spock, and the first time I saw it, I really was shocked by what happened, and it makes a lot of sense. So it's this moment where Kirk doesn't want to take on the mission, and Spock is ordering him to,
Mm-hmm.
and Kirk is like, "Why?" Right? And Spock says, "Well, if you don't do it, they'll die. If we don't help them, they'll die."
Mm-hmm.
And Kirk goes, "Let them die."
Mm-hmm.
And the first time I saw it, I was like, "That's not Kirk. That's
Mm-hmm.
not the Kirk that I know and love." But it is. This is the Kirk who saw his son get murdered. This is the Kirk who's been through stuff, who's seen the ruthlessness of the Klingons, who doesn't want to help. And it's a really beautiful moment. We as humans have a tendency to dehumanize our enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is when it comes to make peace, it's really hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really cool to explore that here.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other stuff that I love that isn't so huge and philosophical. I love
Yeah.
that Michael Dorn shows up as Worf's great whatever, being Kirk and McCoy's defense counselor in this
Yeah.
thing. That's a really cool kind of turn of events. I also love that Sulu is now the captain of the Excelsior. It's so cool. Like, it's hard to keep everyone in a cast and their characters in the same place, in the same position, in the same whatever over the course of a TV show. These movies have spanned like another 20, 30 years after that. And it doesn't make sense that Uhura is still there and Scotty's still there and Chekhov's still there. But Sulu at least gets to be a captain. And it's cool that Janice Rand, that character, is next to him on the bridge. I think that that's a really great kind of moment. So those are my favorite things about it. Hey, what do you like?
Well, I got to tell you, I also love that Sulu gets to be a captain. That's one of the smaller things on my list. I don't know if you've seen all of Star Trek Voyager, but there's
Yes,
a great
episode. Yeah,
where it turns out that Tuvok was on that ship the whole time, which I think that a lot of the that could have played like a cop out, but it felt really right. I love General Chang. He's not my favorite Klingon ever, but I think he gets everything that Christopher Lloyd doesn't quite get. He gets right about Klingonness.
mm-hmm.
I think that they looked at Khan and they tried to just make a Klingon like Khan, quoting literature and all of that. Cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war. All of that good stuff, and that's fun. He's not my favorite Klingon. That belongs to Michael Dorn's Worf, of course. He's the best, but he's great. And I think that he's a great conniving villain. I also like that some of the villains are on the Federation side because, like you said, it's this kind of post-Soviet era thing going on with the Klingons. And the enemies of peace are not just the people that we used to think were our enemies. The enemies of peace are just the enemies of peace, and they can be on either side. And so, there's a member of the Admiralty on all this. There's the Vulcan gal whose name escapes me, but
Lieutenant
yes. And I thought that was great. I love Kirk's connection to the third movie, and David dying and that really affecting him. Like we said in our Undiscovered Country, Final Frontier episode, I mix these up a lot. As we said in the Final Frontier episode, I really think that Kirk should have some internal conflict after his son dies, and you said that should drive his fear and pain that Sybok was going to take away, and I think that's right. I think that's correct, and I think that Undiscovered Country does a little bit to fix that. I think that's great. And then there's just this little moment where Bones and Spock are working on a torpedo at the end, to get General Chang's ship. And I love that it's not Scotty. I love that it's Bones and Spock together as a little send off. And I feel sacrilegious saying that to the engineer, but God, there's a rocket sitting right next to me that I built in college. Like, the engineering gods are not happy with me today, but I love that it's Bones and Spock doing it instead of Scotty. And there's a great little moment where Bones is like, I'd pay real money if he'd shut up. When General Chang is doing his literature stuff. I think that's great. I think it's a wonderful moment between the characters. I think Undiscovered Country is really fun. It's not this even odd thing. I don't think it's as good as the main three for me, which were
Yep.
Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, and Voyage Home. But it's pretty good. I rather enjoy it. Dan, I know that enjoy this film too, but it wouldn't be a Mirror Movie Universe podcast episode without a fix. So fix this episode up. Fix the movie. What are you gonna change?
Yeah. So I think there's an obvious one, and I want to get it out of the way and then not do it. Okay. So I think the obvious one for me is you've had this new Vulcan character, Lieutenant Valeris. Interestingly, I think Nicholas Meyer wanted to bring back Savick to play this character, and Gene Roddenberry, furious, was like, "No, you can't do that," blah blah blah, and then died a couple months or later, and so they wound up being a new character. That's a story that I heard anyway. I think it would an easy fix is to make her a Romulan. It doesn't make sense to me that a Vulcan driven by logic is so hateful towards the Klingons. Like, there doesn't seem to be much logic there. It would be an easy fix to do, but I want to shy away from it because I think it's a cop out to have like the Romulans be involved here. Like, this really should be about making peace with an enemy of the Klingons, and not get anybody else involved, not complicate it. Just, there is hatred on both sides, and it's deep-seated, and it's hard to overcome that for peace. So that's just from a thematic standpoint. I want to get that off the table. I think the weakest part of the film for me is the whole thing with the prison planet, right?
Yeah.
You've got this weird shapeshifter who's there, and it was kind of helping them, but kind of not, but kind of helping them, but kind of not. And the motivation of that character is really tricky to parse out. So I want to do a little bit of a change. That, because it's a shapeshifter, is really easy to do. You can keep a lot of what's there already. But I want to bring in an actress to add to that and to kind of reveal something. So I'm going to say that we bring back, and I want to look up her name to get it right. Her name is Susan Howard. She played the Klingon Mara in the original series episode Day of the Dove, where she is the science officer to Commander Kang, who's also his wife, and she and Kirk kind of negotiate peace, and they laugh at the alien, and it leaves. And I think that by bringing her back, she's on the prison planet, she's in prison, something, whatever, changed her and made her shapeshift and all this stuff. And I think that makes it just a little bit more interesting to have that tie back to that. Maybe she was disgraced for not killing him. Maybe Kang thinks that she's dead, but she's condemned to this prison planet. Like, you can do some really cool stuff with it. And you can keep most of what's there, but really just shoot one scene at the end where it reveals that it's her. And it brings it kind of to tie in a little bit more, give that just a little bit more to go on. And that role, I think it's so wishy-washy that you don't really know what to do with it. So it just brings a little bit more into focus, ties it back to the original series. I think it'd be cool to have that kind of little moment.
I like doing something with that character, but I don't know if I do that with that character. I agree that her motivations are very wishy-washy, and it's the weakest part of the film. I don't know if I would tie it back to the original series. I don't know if I would tie it specifically back to that either. I think that confuses it more a little bit.
Interesting. Okay.
But I agree. I was thinking of things that I could do to fix up the prison planet. And I didn't come up with anything. So I'm not going to fault you because I didn't come up with anything on the prison planet. Yeah. No, I think that's an interesting angle at it. I'm going to have to think about this more. And this is going to be one of the things that we ask our audience to think about more at the end of the episode. But I don't know. I don't know about that one.
Okay. I mean, this is interesting because usually you're not lukewarm. You're like hot or cold on stuff. So it's interesting that I caught you with something that you're really like, ooh, I'm genuinely not sure. I
I I
appreciate
I just don't know. I mean, making it, we went through this whole thing in the last episode, where when we were talking about Final Frontier, and you were like, oh yeah, Klingons aren't in that many episodes of the original series, and they're a huge thing in four of the movies. You want to tie it back to another original series Klingon? It
I
just seems a little.
do.
I
See, that my original thing with Final Frontier was to bring back one of the actors, get rid of Captain whatever his name is, and bring back one of the actors from the original one, Kang or Kolos or whatever,
Mhm.
just to give it a little bit more oomph. But then I thought, just get rid of them. So
Mhm.
that was kind of my holdover idea. I was like, bring back somebody from the original series. Most of them are in Blood Oath and Deep Space Nine, which is really cool.
Mhm.
She's not, though. She doesn't get to come back. And I think it'd be a really cool kind of moment.
God, you're right, and but the I was thinking about this. The easy like Klingon to be the shapeshifter would be Arn Darvin, the guy who pretends to be the guy in Trouble with Tribbles.
Yeah,
But if you do that in Undiscovered Country, he can't be in Trials and Tribulations in Deep Space
exactly.
Nine. So that nixes that, doesn't it? Shoot. All right,
Yeah.
fine. I accept. I'm no longer lukewarm. I'm bought in. Um.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right.
So what's
I'm
your
in.
what's your fix? What do you got?
Okay, so I also thought of making Valeris a Romulan, and the reason I think that that's a bad idea is that this episode of Next Generation had aired by this point, so I don't think it's as obvious of a fix. But there's an episode of Next Generation called The Drumhead, where there is
Wonderful episode.
there yeah, and for our listeners, there's this episode where um there's a huge conspiracy going on the Enterprise. There's thoughts of Romulan sabotage, and they bring in this Vulcan like ensign or second lieutenant or something who has like Romulan ancestry. And there's almost like a McCarthy Red Scare kind
Yeah.
of like, oh, you must be evil because you're a Romulan. And so making the Vulcan on the ship secretly Romulan, I don't know, it kind of, after the Drumhead, which is what that episode is called, it feels kind of, I don't know, it feels kind of antithetical to the whole point of Roddenberry's like, you know, anti-authoritarian, just sort people into boxes kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, so what I would do, and this is really easy, is give Michael Dorn's character a name and actually make him like Worf's grandfather or something. Worf is my favorite Klingon of all time.
Yeah.
And giving him something like that would be awesome. I don't know, and I'll have to look this up. I don't know if by this point it had already been established why Worf's family was disgraced. But if
I
it hadn't been,
think
make it, if it hadn't been, make it this. Make the House of Moog like disgraced for like something connected directly to the events we see on screen in this film.
yeah.
I know that there's something to do with treachery in the Romulans and all of that kind of stuff, and betrayal of the Klingon Empire. It might even have to do with Camp Kittimer. I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it does.
But, but make it actually this guy, and let Michael Dorn do actually be like Worf's grandfather or something. Because to have sometimes it's a cop out to have an actor play like the grandfather of himself or whatever. But familial connections are so important to Klingons as a narrative device and as a species. That makes sense. He's of the House of Moog. Make him play this guy. That's what I would do. And I thought that, because we were talking before this episode, you're like, oh, there's an obvious fix.
An obvious one, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it's make Michael Dorn's character Worf's relative. Like for sure. Like that's the obvious fix. I was certain that's what you would pick. Certain. And you didn't. You went with something else.
I know. Well, I thought that the Vulcan Romulan thing was the obvious one. So
yeah. Well, not unless you've seen the Next Generation episode of Drumhead. But yeah, it's whatever. But yeah. Well, what did you think of our fixes, loyal audience? Did you think they were, too easy of cop outs with Worf's relative,
Great,
or
great.
would you like something more complex? What did you think of Dan's fix? I don't know, because I was lukewarm, and now I
Yeah,
was here, and
did
now
I
I'm
fool
here
you?
a
You
little
tell
bit.
us, internet audience, how should Nate feel? 'Cause he's not sure.
Yeah. All right. But in the meantime, like and subscribe and all of that bull crap. And I think we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Thank you for watching.